I had to push a button. Well, welcome everybody. I'm David Lindruth, Assistant Bishop for the General Church, and I'm really glad to be here with you today. We have our second testing live stream where we're exploring different topics with the church. One of the big topics that I'd like to explore with you is what are the ways we can interact with each other, cooperate to help the Lord build His church on earth. And that's one of the things that we're going to focus on today. We have Jane Enis, who is the department head for what we call the Healthy Congregations Department. That is an effort that we have started here in Brenathan to try to help congregations find that gear of whatever that next chapter might be, a new gear or whatever it is, to help them move forward and do more of the Lord's work better, is the way I would summarize it. Anyway, I'm going to bring Jane in a minute, and then later we're going to have Ethan McCardle, who's a pastor in Tucson, Arizona at Sunrise Chapel, and he is a pastor with whom Jane has been engaging and supporting with strategic planning and things like that, so that you could have a little bit of a flavor of, well, what is that interaction like and how's it going? So let's start off by welcoming Jane. So I'll bring her in here. Hello, Jane. Yay!
Hello. Woohoo! Hey! All right. Well, I am very happy to be here and excited to share all of this hard work that we've been doing in the Global Healthy Congregations Department. So I'm going to start out. We are working right now with 4 pilot projects, and we are building and testing and adjusting a repeatable and scalable project management system. The intention is that system could then be deployed across all general church congregations. So David in a minute is going to share a screen that's kind of going to show you a 30,000-foot view of this system. But first I want to key in on the word scalable, because each one of our pilots are very unique. You have the New Church of Boulder Valley. We have the Sunrise Chapel in Tucson. And we have the Midwest New Church in Maysville, Missouri. And then our 4th pilot project is the General Church in the UK. Every one of those brings something different to the table. They all have different, all kinds of different opportunities, unique challenges. They're different sizes. The one in Maysville, Missouri, the Midwest New Church, is a brand new church. They have only been in existence for a little under a year. So they are working hard to build an actual church. The General Church in the UK has got some unique challenges right now. They are going from 2 churches in the UK down to 1, and 2 ministers down to 1. So each one of these, and the whole point of this is we are going to be able to work through this system, as I said, make adjustments to it, do different things that could potentially work in your congregation, and we will be working through these and making those adjustments as we go along.
So I want to hold for just a second here, Jane. Tell us a little bit about how you got roped into this, just for a little personal touch here.
Absolutely. So my background is in manufacturing. I spent 30 years in manufacturing. 24 of those years was in foam fabrication, making mattress pads. So I sometimes joke with David, you know, I've taken mattress pads and I'm doing this, and it's like the greatest joy that has been given to me in my career. So I'm really happy to be here and working with some phenomenal people.
So you're just helping congregations make mattress pads. And by the way, I would say that all of my children in college have slept on those mattress pads at one time or another.
Well, we started it out. Our first customer was Dollar General, and then we moved to Walmart, and then the rest was history.
Oh,
But
cool.
what we are doing with the congregations is we are taking business processes and project management tools, and we are introducing them to the congregation. And I think what is really unique about this system that we're using, there's 5 elements to it. 4 of them, and David, maybe go ahead and share the slide.
There we
Tell
go.
me when it's up.
The slide
Okay.
is up.
Slide is up. So 4 of those elements are right there in that beginning slot. So we start off in our different pilot projects by conducting a SWOT analysis. We do vision work. We do a Hoshin process, and we end up with 5-year goals. Now, I want to call out a couple of people. Ned Huber has been just a tremendous help with the Hoshin facilitation in both Boulder and in Tucson. And as I talked about, we are scaling these things to fit the different types of congregations that we have. So in the UK, they're not quite doing it this way, but we are making adjustments. They bring all these elements in, but not doing it exactly the way Tucson did it.
So, Jane,
The one in, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but maybe you could define what a Hoshin system is a little bit.
Absolutely. So Hoshin, in the Japanese brought the Hoshin process over in the automobile industry 25, 30 years ago. And when you think of Hoshin, think of a compass and think of that metal arrow that's pointing us in the right direction. That is really the definition of Hoshin. So we work a process that Ned puts us through, and it's a very intense 8 hours on Saturday, 6 hours, 5 hours maybe on Sunday. And the Hoshin process and all the brainstorming and everything that we work through, between 5 and say 10 key themes just emerge from that process. And we find out in those themes what we really need to concentrate on for the congregation to achieve their 5-year goals.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it's like figuring out what your true north is and how to navigate from wherever you are. Something like that, right?
Absolutely. We split these first 4 elements over 2 weekends. So we do the SWOT analysis and the vision and the goal setting in that first weekend, and then we break for about 2 weeks and we bring people back together and we do the Hoshin process. That
So
first
SWOT,
weekend,
for
ahead.
people who might not know, that's another, it's kind of a business cliche, but it's an evaluation of what your strengths, your weaknesses are, what possible opportunities are there in looking out in your environment, and what kind of threats exist that might shut you down. So that
So-
equals SWOT. Yep.
Exactly. And from that's how we are developing our 3 5-year goals. We ask the question to the congregation. So you've looked at your strengths, you've looked at your weaknesses, you've looked at all the opportunities that are out there and your threats. It is 5 years from now, and what did we accomplish in trying to take advantage of those strengths and really watch out for the weaknesses, improve those, and be watching for the threats. So they do that, and it's a very I think it brings the congregation together. I think after COVID, the thing that I have experienced with each one of these congregations, it might be the first time that they came together and really worked on something outside of worship. And they really engaged. And that has been a really nice thing to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And then that second weekend is when we go into Hoshin. And we develop those 5 to 8 themes. In Tucson, I'll just go over some of the themes that came out that from that process. They recruit and engage and empower lay participation and leadership. Outreach to those beyond the current Sunrise Chapel group. In-reach to those within the Sunrise Chapel. Actively fundraise and recruit donors. So we pick out, at the end of that weekend, we pick out the top 3 themes. And we ask someone in the group to step up and be a team leader to champion that particular theme. So we end up with 3 team leaders. And we move into our next part of the process.
So I'm going to interrupt right now just because one of the things that has impressed me about you, Jane, is you just have this complete willingness to interact with anybody who shows up from the perspective of how can I help? And that has been so helpful and motivating for people. I know in Boulder, I had a lot of response from people in Boulder about how just enlivening that felt for them, and it made them want to help too, so it's been a great thing.
Well, thank you very much. I have been touched very deeply by working with the people that I've gotten the opportunity to work with. So it's been a great, great thing for me, and it seems to be taking traction in Boulder. So I want to move on to this next part of the system. What you're seeing on your screen is that second box. And that is very, very important. That is the EOS 90-day priorities, monthly check-in process. And for me, I have been involved. I'm a member of the Glenview New Church and been here for 26 years. Mm-hmm. I have been a part of Hoshin processes. I've been a part of SWOT analysis. But I truly believe that this particular part of our process is something that we've just not done.
And what does EOS? EOS stands for what?
Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Okay.
And I will tell you that Ian Carswell, another terrific support that I've had in this past year in developing some of these processes, he uses this system in his business every day. And it came out of a book. I don't know if you can see it.
You have to move it over toward you a little bit more. There we go.
All right.
Traction.
Get a grip on your business. So obviously this is a business book and it's got business fundamentals, but we have adapted this to meet a nonprofit world where we have volunteers who are showing up because they love their church and they want to see it flourish. So this process, as I was saying, really does help us stay on track, because what I saw in the past, and it was due to nothing but people being overwhelmed with a lot of things to do, is we would develop those 5-year goals. We'd work really hard doing Hoshin and a SWOT analysis, and then it would just sit on the shelf and nothing would happen. Well, we've got the 3 people in charge of those top 3 themes that are established. They come together with myself and their pastor once a month, and we develop a 90-day priority list where for each one of their themes, they pick out 1 or 2, and if they're really feeling like they can do it, 3 priorities that they're going to accomplish in those 90 days. And fundamentally, this is just a step-by-step process. This is how you get from point A to point Z. And you do it, in a very methodical way. We're not going to achieve that 5-year goal overnight. It's going to take 5 years of 90-day priorities and checking in with each other on a monthly basis to keep everyone very motivated, keep everyone on track. We have a scorecard that we use where we track our metrics, and it's, as I said, I hate to use the word traction, but I think in Boulder they're getting some traction. They are in their second round of the 90-day priorities. In Tucson, Ethan will join us shortly. They are just beginning. They've just set their first 90-day priorities. I was on the phone today with Calvin Heinrichs talking about their 90-day priorities. And the UK has got their list of 90-day priorities. So we're all in the middle of this system. I'll just kind of go over, once we get through with the first 90 days, we do a big review where I come in and we meet for 4 or 5 hours with the project team and the pastor. We look at what worked, what didn't work. We say, you know what, we might need to make slight adjustments. And then we plan for the next 90 days and pick out more priorities.
What if somebody gets stuck, like a group leader or rock leader gets stuck 10 days into it? So it's not 90 days, it's only been 10. What do they do?
Yep. Well, we meet on a monthly basis. We have a scorecard where we have everything charted out as to what everybody committed to accomplishing. And we take our monthly meeting, which is a 90-minute meeting, and we spend 60 minutes of that 90 minutes figuring out what are those roadblocks. What is happening? What is happening that they can't achieve it? And that, maybe we need to change the priority a little bit. Maybe there's a real roadblock that can't happen. But we really delve into a solve. And when we leave that night or that afternoon, we've got a solve for that person, and they're able to go out and accomplish that priority. I will tell you, in Boulder, their first 90-day priorities, they achieved 2 out of 3. Someone asked me, is that a good thing? And I will tell you, when Ian Carswell heard that, he said, Jane, that is phenomenal. He said, that doesn't happen. Usually they fail on all of the first 90-day priorities. But so they're making some real strides and significant improvements. So I'm really thrilled about that.
Yeah, and I think when you go visit Boulder, you can see that there's been a shift in energy, and there's an excitement that has been brewing since the congregation engaged with you. I think another thing has just been there are more people showing up in church, and that's really cool. So
it is.
That's something we love.
They started out when we started the process with an average attendance of about 35 people. And on our scorecard, we are tracking that, and right now they're averaging around 48 to 50 people on a Sunday morning, and they've gotten 3 or 4 new people. So
that's awesome. I interrupting only because we realized that the chat function is not working for some reason on YouTube.
That has been solved.
It's solved.
Just a quick refresh on my end. This is Heath Pitcairn.
Oh.
I'm on the side helping David with the technical aspects of the song.
Yeah, if you're really lucky, he'll dip in a little bit so you get to see him, but he's sitting over next to me running all the tech. So if you have a question as we're going through, you can type that in, and if we can possibly answer that, please do. Feel free to ask whatever you want. So we got that running.
One last thing that I'd like to say on this system, it's not rocket science. None of this is hard to do, but it takes dedication. I will tell you, every one of our pilot projects that has signed up to be one, their congregations wanted to get involved. They wanted to do this, and that's what it takes. The pastor can't do everything. My department is willing to share and work with them as much as possible. But in the end, it is going to take that core group of people stepping up and doing these things to achieve their goals.
Yeah, so I'm also going to interrupt one more time, and I think, we all recognize that it's the Lord's church, right? He builds it. The life in the church, if it's really alive, it's the Lord's life, which is awesome. But one of the things that I've noticed is we are capturing so much information about, well, what are people trying and what is working, what's generating information. What we learn from Boulder, we can share that with the people in Tucson. We can share that with people in the UK or wherever we're engaged. And we learn so much more. We're developing this body of knowledge and expertise that we could share with people. And that is invaluable because it's hard to go at this alone. And I think prior to this, I think there was a lot of feeling out there that, well, we're just trying to figure it out, and you feel like you have to solve everything on your own. And this offers more of a church community, which is really, really helpful and inspiring. I think maybe we ought to pull in that guest that we have. What do you think?
Sounds like a good idea.
All right, so go ahead.
I'm going to say that it's been such a pleasure to work with Ethan. He, from the very beginning, we started working with Sunrise Chapel back in September. And we just started this process. We completed the Hoshin and the SWOT analysis back in February and early March. And when we approached Tucson, they had some unique challenges that needed to be addressed. And we put together a project team, one thing around the ownership of their building. Mm-hmm. And then they were having some accounting issues with an old system that needed to be converted. And we were able to get an accountant, a CPA, to go in, and he's migrating their old system to a new system. And they are now ready to really get involved and do this. So got a lot of great committed people in Tucson.
So as we welcome him, but just give us a little gem that you have picked up as you got to know him over the last, I don't know, what's it been, 5 months now?
It's been a while. I just appreciate his dedication, and he,
there he is, by the way.
There he is. I'm not able to see him, but he has been a real support to me. And this is, at the first year that we were trying to put this all together, and he kept encouraging me, and it's just been a really great thing to work with him, and I do appreciate it.
Well, welcome, Ethan. Why don't you let us know you're live here and that your audio works?
Okay, testing.
Yep, we're here. You're live. Good deal.
Hey.
Well, welcome, Ethan. It's really wonderful to have you here, and maybe you could give a little flavor about what the situation was. What was your thoughts around engaging with Jane, and how's that been?
That's where I wanted to start, if I could. First of all, I'm grateful to be here. I think that Jane very well encapsulates with her leadership style something Charles Arnn said a couple years ago in an outreach gathering I went to. He's a world famous church statistician, and he talked about 3 evangelistic modes. He said there's, it was salesman, customer, teacher, student, friend to friend. And certainly I think that last one describes the nature of the relationship I feel like I've developed personally with Jane, but I think the congregation feels that. And I think that is a lot of what's happened in the early days of getting this project off the ground. Is it hasn't just engaged people in reaching out to new folks. It is accomplished in-reach that way too. They're developing their relationships with one another. So there's an increase in warmth and excitement and connection amongst the congregation. And I wasn't intending to do this, but I saw Mike Gladish's question pop up at the bottom, and it's too early for us to see where this is going to go for things like our attendance metrics. But I can tell you after a lull that we had 82 people on Easter.
Woo.
And yeah, it was a really nice turnout. And I attribute some of that energy to the very early days of getting started with this process. And the analogy I would use is we have a pretty clergy-centric model in the church. And so a lot of what happens behind the scenes. And it's not always, and this isn't to cast aspersions, but it's not always a y'all come kind of welcome for the people of the church to get involved. It's not obvious what there is to get involved with, and you can't always draw a line back from the things you're doing to try to contribute to the difference it's making in the church. One of the big differences I'm seeing with this model is it feels like everyone's in the sandbox. They have things that they're passionate about and feeling called to, and there's a system for them to engage those things and actually make a difference from their sense of calling with it as part of a team. And then you have the follow through that we're doing, where you don't just organize your teams, develop job descriptions for them, and set them loose. Then you're getting together to check in on the different action items that have been assigned, hold each other accountable, and actually get excited for where it's going, because you can see where you started, you can see where you're making progress, and everybody wants to see it keep moving. Everyone's invested that way. So that's not a full answer to Mike's question, but to me that's been part of it. That was a bit of a tangent. What was the other thing you asked me?
Well, you're remembering that Terry Romaine asked about what the Hoshin was, which you did explain, but I thought I'd just give you my little take on that, which is it approaches an organization, what the organization does, trying to look at it from a lot of different dimensions, a lot of different perspectives. So you really want to gather a lot of people that are involved in a church, for example, and hear all of the different perspectives about what's working, what's not working, what they would like to see in the church. And it boils all of that stuff together to lay down the basics of a strategic plan. So it's a really helpful approach, especially when it's a congregation or a large body of people, a group that's complex, and it helps you kind of focus, okay, well, listening to all these voices, how do you boil it down? How do you see how one issue can relate to another? How do you prioritize different issues and that kind of thing? It works you through all of that stuff. So like what Jane said, you wind up with, what your 3 things that you want to work on in the next 90 days is going to be to help move you forward. So that's a pretty big summary. Thanks. Go ahead, Jane.
And I was just going to end that, and I think that's an excellent summary, is that everybody agrees. That's the amazing part of Hoshin, is you do all of this, you go through all of Ned's different processes, and at the end of it, everybody agrees, yeah, these are the top 3 things we really need to work on. So
with you, Ethan, then what are your top rocks right now? What are you guys focused on?
Well, so I want to say just a word on where we started before Hoshin, which was we've had, let's see, this place was chartered in 1987. You were here, Dave, so you probably remember when the building project happened here, which was 1992, I think it started in earnest.
Some of the building project, yeah, I was there. It would have been after 94 is when I showed up.
Okay. So, and it happened in stages. It started with the chapel, and then the Friendship Hall was added part 1, and then part 2, and then the offices. And at the time, as was true with a lot of these projects, it was sort of a we'll just spit in a handshake on this thing and we'll work out the details later, but we'll loan you the money and we'll figure it out. And it just was never ironed out. And over time, that led to confusion and I would say to an extent, some tension and some lack of buy-in around that part of the relationship with the congregation. So having identified that right away when she first came, Jane was saying with our team, let's work on getting the relationship between the denomination and the building sorted out first, so that people really feel like they've got an energy building that's positive. So we, as of this call, are in the final stages of our what'll become our quitclaim deed, which spells out the nature of the agreement on the building. And then we moved from there to our accounting processes. Like a lot of congregations, it's been a little bit lick and a promise, depending on who has served the function and what they knew to bring to the job. And I think part of this isn't just to help us systematize how we do the books, but there's a hope that that will become something that's scalable across the church. So we have begun with Keith Hyatt's help, who's been wonderful, our conversion to QuickBooks and our systematizing of our accounts, which will include things like being able to give regular profit and loss reports to the board using QuickBooks for the first time ever. Pretty exciting. Cool. There's been a general sense of where the finances are, but not granular. So it gives us a really detailed look at where we are and helps us set our goals for where we want to be as a congregation. And then this last part, going into the Hoshin, we have, for this first 90 days, come up with 3 areas of emphasis. We're talking about recruiting and engaging and developing our volunteers, enhancing our communications, and engaging our donor base and upping our degree of financial participation and support. And we have some specific metrics in each of those categories that we're working towards. And as of this meeting, we have 2 of the 3 of those leaders sorted, having just established these priorities, and 2 of them having their first meetings lined up. So I think that's the other thing about this system I'm really enjoying is the pastor isn't doing everything. The pastor isn't even hovering over it to make sure it gets done. People are getting enthused and jumping in themselves. Which, just one last point along the question Mike had that way, I think this is the other thing. I think this leap in engagement and attendance and participation right now is starting within people that didn't really feel like there were natural inroads for them to become involved or getting excited and getting involved. And then in our case, for Easter, invited a bunch of their friends, and some of these people hadn't been back to this church in a while. So terrific. Just that kind of energy shift is huge, I think.
Yeah, I have to think, just reflecting on your predecessor, Nathan Gladish, when he was there, I think he did 40 funerals in like 8 years when he was there. 40 funerals. When you do 40 funerals in your congregation, it's like you're running off of a cliff. And that in itself just speaks volumes for the congregation is growing out of that and figuring it out in such a way that, all right, so that when you lose 40 people, you lose a lot of people and you lose a lot of energy. But trying to create and characterize, here's what we can do, here's what works within the energy level of the congregation and of the people that are left. Let's define this in ways that make it doable for these people rather than having a sense of doom and overwhelm. And I think this is just my view from being far away, but what I've gotten the vibe that I've gotten coming out of Tucson is we can do this, which has been really cool.
Very much.
Thank you, Ethan. I wanted to jump in with one of the things that Ethan touched on, which we're calling it part of our toolkit that the department is developing, and to speak to Ethan's comment about the minister can't do everything. Each one of our pilot projects, there's only one minister in residence in those congregations, so they need support. And I think one of the things that when I came to work at the General Church, I am so impressed and just really have enjoyed getting to know the people that work in the central office. I see what kind of energy they have, the things that we can do in the central office to support congregations, and so we are building a toolkit. And one of those is a treasurer support package. David Frazier has been instrumental in getting Keith Hyatt involved in Tucson, and we're developing a chart of accounts and a QuickBooks package that I think we will be able to deploy throughout the General Church where it's needed. We're working with our communications department. Mareka Bomatson has helped the contact management system that Boulder is testing. We'll see how that works, and if that works, then we will be deploying that to other congregations. With our outreach department, we have a marketing package that we're working on with Pierce Frazier's help and the other people in his department. We have got a lot of people that are would like to be helping these congregations, and I see our department as that conduit to get these things to the congregations where they can actually do something with it. One last thing is leadership training package. Nathan Gladish and I have talked about that for a small group package where we actually work with people to feel like they have the confidence to lead a small group, and how do they get there. And then finally, we're working on a church starter kit. All the work that's going on in Maysville at the Midwest New Church, we need to learn from that, because this, I'm hoping, will not be the last new church that we start. And so we'd like to have a package that we could say to the next group, look, these are the things that you need to do, these are the things we can support, and move through that. So I'm very excited about the toolkit that we're working on. It'll be a multi-year process to get that all done, but that's something that we are engaged in.
Cool. I have a million questions, but one of them goes back, I guess, a little bit to toolkitty kind of thing, which is tell us, Ethan, a little bit about the beginning of this process where you were considering what the mission and vision of the congregation is. So you're sort of doing a little bit of a reformulation of what its mission is. I know you guys considered that, and then also, well, what is the vision? What's this thing going to look like in 10 years? And tell us a little bit about those things.
Well, I might be starting a little bit before your question, but when Ned was out here for that part of it, he started that session by having everybody who was there. Jane, I think it was about 15 of us, give or take.
It was. Yep.
And we went around the table, and he just said, "Why Sunrise Chapel?" You know, and in our case, and I don't know how unique this is anymore, but certainly for this group, a lot of the people around that table that were helping with this process were people that came into this church within the last 20 years. And so they gave their testimony about what it is they've loved about Sunrise Chapel, what's kept them there, and to an extent, hopes they have for its future. And when they were done, Ned was like, this is, we got to bottle this and figure out a way to get it out there. And I think we come out of a culture where we don't do enough telling of the story of, how have I felt the presence of the Lord in my life? How have these teachings transformed my life, developed that relationship, help me feel like I'm not alone. I have a place. I have a purpose. That was really what was coming out in those stories, and essentially, that ended up launching us very organically into this visioning process. And just to give you the number that came out of that, they essentially took where we'd been in our average attendance. And Jane, did we make this a 5-year goal? I don't have my paperwork in front of me.
We did.
Our attendance goal was a 5-year goal. So they essentially, they were ambitious enough to take our average attendance and say, we're going to double it over that 5-year period. But I really think they didn't start there. There was, as people were sitting around the table, before Ned got them started, there was a little bit of, we've done processes like this before, and people get excited for a year or two, and then it poops out. There was a little bit of that skepticism. But as soon as they started telling their story, remembering what got them there, getting excited for small groups and worship and ministry and mission, then he essentially brought them back to, okay, where do you think the Lord could take this over the next 5 years? And there was all this, it was an enthusiasm, but that was grounded and felt achievable by the end of the process. So I don't know that answers everything you were asking, but that was my sort of assessment of the energy, where it started and where it ended up. And I'd say we're still riding that wave as we get started.
Nice. That's really nice. Yeah, that very much gets into the stuff that I was thinking about. And by the way, Ethan, I think you need to slide a little bit to your left because we actually have a very narrow view of you, more narrow than what you see. So you're kind of, no, other way.
Yeah.
There we go. Little more. Little more.
Room.
There you go. Yep. Thank you. We just thought you had, you were only half here.
Story of my life.
Yeah, right. Well, you were half, in heaven, right?
In heaven, that's right.
So while we're exploring some of this stuff, I know that you and Dave Roth started a podcast recently, and how does that relate to this work?
What did we say about it, Jane? It's a passion project. It's an outgrowth of this enthusiasm. Dave Roth and I have fireside chats every week about spiritual things we care about, and it was as we were getting started in this process in each of our respective congregations, we were like, would you be up for just doing what we do on the phone, but doing it in a larger context? And my answer at first was, no, I don't want to. No, I don't. That makes me extremely uncomfortable. But the more you start thinking and living this work, you start thinking to yourself, well, maybe it would be helpful to somebody else. Maybe it would be hopeful to somebody else, hence the title. What are we afraid of? Why would I feel like I wouldn't want to have this conversation in front of other people? And I think that COVID has launched all of us into, hey, guess what? Whether you wanted it or not, you're going to have to get more comfortable with tech. But I think in this next phase where we're saying we really want to be intentional, reaching out from what we're passionate about, the church's message, you start thinking, well, I'll give this a shot. I'd say that energy has infected this little group here in Tucson, and it's had a similar impact in my own life. So we've started with that podcast, and I'm now, I think Howard Thompson is on here, who was part of my inspiration for this. I'm now considering um, spiritual shorts is his title, but digital shorts in some form from the messages. We also started a little program that you can take your longer messages and feed it into this and come up with little clips that basically turn it into sort of a TikTok worthy minute long thought for the day. So you can even take existing content and do this. And I see Howard's comment. I started out somewhat reluctantly myself, but I'm finding the more I do this, the more I'm enjoying it, seeing people connecting to it, and that it's not as scary to me anymore, and it feels like I'm more engaged with more people just sitting in my little office than I was when I started. And I think the kind of stuff we've been doing with this project is part of the reason why I felt up for it in the first place.
So just interjecting here, Howard did a live stream with me 2 weeks ago where he described all of his approach to doing the spiritual shorts and all of that. So you can find that. We have it uploaded. It should be, just right there in the same channel. So if you want to learn more about that, you can listen to that, or you can reach out to Howard directly.
Yeah, he's the expert on stuff.
All right. So Jane, how about broadening this just a little bit? So your interactions with the UK, for example, that's a very, very different climate with almost a completely different set of goals. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I would say that the UK, as we talked about, they are going through a big transformation, and they are committed. Again, it's just a lot of very committed people to this church, the greater church, and they would like to do what they can to foster small groups around the UK that could start out as a small group, maybe graduate to a circle at some point. They will stay tied in for the time being to Michael Church, and I believe that there is another minister that's going to be helping them on a part-time basis. But their goals right now are they're basically those same goals that the others are around church growth, getting the youth engaged, and creating a bigger leadership team to take on some of these big projects. So I think that the challenges there for us will be to engage people that are no longer getting church every week, and how to keep them involved, and not overwhelming the one minister. And right now we've got 2 team leaders. We're looking for a third one to take on their goals, and we are just gotten started with the 90-day program, and we are meeting with them in the UK in the coming month, and we will be talking more about this and how to manage the process.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a reality that's being articulated in this where, we're seeing it around the world, but it's not realistic for the UK to have just 2 congregations, one in South London, where it can take more than an hour to drive from North London to South London if you're going to try to attend church in person. Or say you live in Oxford, or oh no, you live up in Scotland or something like that. And how do you participate in the community? How do you, church as Jesus had said, is where 2 or 3 are gathered together. I'm there in the midst of them. They don't necessarily have to be there face to face if we have online opportunity to gather people in community, well, sort of like what we're doing right now. But how do you build a church that maybe is, in the UK, we're thinking, well, it's a national church. We're really focusing on developing a national sense of community. If you happen to start reading Swedenborg and his theology, and you're in Wales or someplace, how do you engage? How do you get in touch with people? How do you have those dialogues that are so important to the life of the church? And how do you come into a community where there's that level of trust that you can engage freely, you can express yourself, you can misspeak, you can, air things that you don't understand, or maybe things that you have completely wrong, and you can engage in a dialogue that's charitable and nice and supportive. And at least from where we are as a small church, we're finding that we need to rethink what church is, because it used to be, and maybe it still is a little bit, the UK, we had 2 congregations, one in a city called Colchester, which is about an hour and a half north of London, and then one in the south of London. And if you were wanting to attend church, that's where you had to go, unless you went to one of the camps. So shifting it around so it's a UK church, while we worship in person in a couple of locations, and maybe we're going to show up in the future in some of these remote locations, and we're going to set up a live stream church. So you have this opportunity to come in person maybe once or twice or quarterly, but still really be engaged in the community. And we can support you no matter where you are in the UK. And and I'd love to get the Swedish church reps in for a live stream as well, because we have the same thing going there, where we have one congregation in Stockholm, but we have people engaged from all over, actually all over Scandinavia. And they'll have programs where we have people from up north of the Arctic Circle. We have people coming from Norway. We have people coming from down in France and attending, who are just expats, working in Paris and things like that. But they're all able to engage and participate in a community now in a way that they never could before. So it used to be, sort of one-on-one, and that's all changing now. And so this has really shifted post-COVID. So we.
I'll say too.
Go ahead.
In the UK, they are in the process of hiring a social media manager in their congregation, because that is going to be key, because you're going to have, theoretically, you'll have the Colchester small group, and then there's maybe one other one now that will be streaming into their services on Sunday. And communication, part of the gift of what we have been able to do and the other 3 congregations is bringing people together. And the UK doesn't have that opportunity. So social media is going to play a big role in that, so that they have effective communication between all the people that are not able to get to Michael Church every Sunday.
Yeah, well, that is underlying everything, if you ask me. Just communication, trying to create pathways for people to be able to talk to each other and walk this walk together, because it's so much harder to do if you're on your own. So anyway, that's really cool. So Jane, you got a piece of your work down in West Africa right now. Do you want to just say a little bit about that?
I would love to. That has been another gift in this work that I'm doing. I have gotten to know Reverend Giampi, who is our current regional pastor. He's retiring, Dave, after how many years?
35, 40.
35 years. He's retiring this year. And Reverend Sylvan is going to be taking over in July. Reverend Giampi has been terrific for me as an introduction to West Africa. And recently we were able to hire a part-time project manager for West Africa. That is making a tremendous impact on the region. He is able to bring some of these same types of tools to West Africa in project management and getting the accounting systems and audit systems underway, getting us, again, really good communication between the national pastors and the regional pastor back to the general church. And I just think he lives in Ghana, so it's boots on the ground there that is going to be able to facilitate better communication and getting more things done in West Africa.
Yeah, we have 24 churches down there, so that's a huge operation, and it's one of the highlights of who we are as a community because we have that back and forth communication influence. So it's really not just a Western world church. When you have that kind of influence coming into the church, it's got a dramatic effect on just the tone and the feel of the whole organization, which is something I really deeply appreciate. So I'm glad you're engaged in that. And I should mention that I know I had a little bit of interactions with people before this live stream from South Africa where they were saying, hey, can you help us down in South Africa? And I think, Jane, you have an answer to that.
I absolutely do. I would look forward to that.
Yeah. So it's just amazing the stuff that we're learning right now, and that's really a key thing. Do you have a couple of words about what you see this looking like maybe 3 or 4 years from now as a support? Uh-oh, Jane, are you stuck? No, you're back, Jane. No? Did we lose you? Well, we seem to have lost Jane. Ethan, are you still here?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Well, this is one of the joys of technology, right? Jane got frozen. Well, all right. So we'll just redirect that question a little bit. We're almost at the hour here anyway. But Ethan, if everything goes, smooth sailing with this, with Sunrise Chapel, where do you think they'll be in 5 years? You talked about congregation growing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and my answer has less to do with numbers and more to do with sort of high-level hopes.
Yeah, I suspected that.
I would hope for three things: that 5 years from now, we started with a reputation in the community that pre-existed because of the incredible work Frank Rose did over the years, but that's a while ago now. So you can have a decent historic reputation, but there's a little bit of what have you done for me lately? So they'll know something about who we are when they hear the name Sunrise Chapel, in terms of how we're serving in the community, something about what we believe, and something about what we're doing to share that message and to serve from that message in ways that are meaningful to the people that have come here. And I think that's more than name recognition, right? That's about the development of relationships.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
That's the long game, I think. you know?
Yeah, for me, I kind of boil it down to Jesus just walked up to these strangers, these people who the last people you ever would have thought would become his apostles, and he said, "Follow me." And they heard that voice and were willing to drop everything and follow him. And we overthink everything in church so much, but that resonates with me. Follow me, or to go back to the prophets, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Here I am. I'm putting my hand up. Send me. Why? Because for various reasons, we as an organization, or the people in this organization, have worked really hard to connect with the Lord so that we can help share his message of love. And my prayer is that's the future, that's what we scratch away at all this stuff about planning and discipline and that kind of thing. But the reason we do that is so that we can have a mutual experience of God's love and his leadership in life through the hard things as well as the easy things. We're at the top of the hour. Ethan, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And Jane, I know you can't hear us because I think your computer died, but really happy that you could be with us, and it really was an interesting and helpful talk. We will upload this afterward, and if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can put a comment in the chat bar, and I'll happily reach out to you. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll be back soon with a new and exciting episode. All right.